What is up, Emerald City? Guys, how we feeling this fine Saturday morning? Woo-woo! Woo-woo. My name is Whitney Moore. Thank you so much for joining me. Those of you who are watching at home, we are here at the SYFY Emerald City stage. We are your source for all things fandom. And I am so excited because today I'm going to talk about some D&D comics with Jim Zub and Max Dunbar. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Don't mind me. I'm just fixing my earpiece. I'm going to casually be doing this entire time.
It's just a perfectly normal Saturday. It's what we do every week, you know.
Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah.
So we have so much to talk about. There's an insane Rick and Morty crossover that is happening that we got to talk about. Yeah, throw it around.
Just throw it around.
Just throw it everywhere.
What would Rick do?
But first, I really want to get into, you guys have been doing D&D comics with IDW for a minute. And what I'm really curious is about you guys use the same cast for these comics.
Yeah.
And so what informed that decision? Did you guys just kind of fall in love with these characters? Was that a decision from IDW? How did that come about?
Well, it's kind of amazing. When 5th edition was launching, so I guess that's like 2014.
Damn.
God, the time is flying. And so while the D&D new edition was being put together, I put together a proposal. It'd be great to bring back the D&D comics. I grew up on Dungeons & Dragons. I've been playing since I was 8 years old. I wouldn't be a writer or a creative person without D&D. It like ignited kind of a spark of creativity in me that has never died. So the thought that we might be able to bring the comics back and do something fun with that. And so I kind of pitched out a bunch of ideas, and Wizards of the Coast came back and said, you know, Baldurs Gate as a setting isn't being used initially. That'd be a fun little playground. You want to do some stuff with that? And so, again, the Baldurs Gate video games were so formative for me. And so we put together kind of a mixed cast of a couple characters from the old video games with some new characters as well. And we just got good momentum with it. And it's sort of like a campaign. Once you start playing with certain characters and you build up a love of playing those characters and engaging with them, more and more stories just start to naturally form. So what was originally just supposed to be a 5-issue miniseries says, well, we could do one more mini. Oh, we'll do another one. And now it's been pretty much every year there's another D&D miniseries with our Baldur's Gate heroes getting themselves into trouble and breaking things. Yeah.
Do you guys have a favorite character to either write for or do the art for?
My favorite character is probably Shandy, who's the halfling rogue / ranger,
Yep.
I guess.
Yeah.
I just love sort of the fact that her proportions, being a halfling, are a bit different. You can do more interesting situations with her in action scenes, that type of thing. So yeah, she's a blast.
I love because I'll stage a scene and I'll say like, oh, Shandy's grabbing someone by the collar, and then Max realizes, yeah, she's a halfling, so he'll have her like step on a table and like pull someone down to her level. So it just becomes a lot more dramatic when she's involved. Or if she's running and firing the bow, she uses a longbow as a halfling, so she has to like hold it at a crazy angle or jump off of a surface in order to fire.
She's like sliding under tables and doing all sorts of crazy stuff.
It's
so
like
it's
there's
really
a lot of opportunities for physical comedy.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
We've
awesome.
got Minsk and Boo, who are these sort of cult characters from the video games. He's this brain-addled ranger who has a pet hamster that he thinks is his familiar, and he'll communicate with it. It is so much fun to write that character. And when I do Minsk, the character has a really distinctive voice that Jim Cummings did from the video game. And I never want to just copy those exact lines, because you don't want it just to be catchphrase after catchphrase.
Right.
So you have to kind of figure out the cadence, like how does that character speak? How would they approach this particular situation? You're role-playing all the time. That's what comic writing is for me. It's like I get into character. Where are these characters? What situation are they in, and what does that mean, you know?
And that it is also like the core of tabletop RPGs
Absolutely.
too, is building a character and deciding what they would do in that situation.
Totally.
You mentioned that you are particularly attached to Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
Is it just because you guys sort of grew up with it, or is there something very different about the story setting that you really, really enjoy?
I mean, I, for one, love the design of the city itself. When I started working on the project, the folks at Wizards of the Coast and IDW sent me a bunch of reference material, maps, layouts, different neighborhoods, and it's a city sort of divided in two. You got the upper city, which is really like posh and high class, beautiful, ornate buildings, and then the lower city, which is, you know, the exact opposite. So from a visual standpoint, it's really fun to run wild and do really opulent scenes in the upper city and really like scummy, like scary scenes in the lower city. So I just really like that aspect of Baldur's Gate from a visual standpoint.
It's a real sandbox of a location. You can kind of tell any kind of story there. You could tell, you know, high magic and a romantic story, or you can do these, you know, what I call low fantasy, you know, mercenaries and pulpy action. There's a big a port area, right? So you've got ships. The visual potential of the city just seems to speak to classic fantasy storytelling, and it's just a great place to play, you know?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about D&D, we talk about almost limitless options in as far
Absolutely.
as storytelling. You can go any way. How do you guys possibly narrow it down and figure out what kind of story you want to tell?
So I always joke around that like Dungeons and Dragons is, you know, 5 people go into a hole and break things. Like D&D is in some ways classic sword and sorcery, but it's also got its own kind of feel to it. And part of what makes it special is the spontaneity that the players bring to the table.
Right.
And that no matter how much a dungeon master plans, and no matter how much you have a pre-written module, and no matter how much you think you know where this will go, something ridiculous or unexpected is going to happen. One roll of a die, one decision of a player can throw an entire story into an amazing and unexpected direction.
Or they could just talk to an NPC for like
Right.
3
Forever,
hours.
yeah.
So part of my
Romance 'em.
job when I started doing the comic was to give that slight feeling of an off-kilter storytelling, that as much as you thought this was going to be a classic fantasy tale with a beginning, a middle, and an end, something's going to throw them a curveball. The characters are going to make some intense in-character decision that takes you off in a fun and unexpected place. And so that feels like D&D, even if I'm making the roles, you know, within the story. Even though
Yeah.
there is a narrative to it, it has that energy of, oh man, here we go, hold on.
That is so cool. And, you know, I think that that translates to any kind of storytelling. I think that it's so inspiring to be surprised by your character.
Right.
Yeah.
That is something that is really cool and a hot writing tip if any of you guys.
Nice. And it's fun to do too, because you want to put these characters in really tough situations and then have them surprise you in terms of how they solve it.
Yeah.
And every so often I think to myself, man, I'm cornering them. Like now I need to figure out how to get them out of it, rather than being like, or I could never put them into it. No, I have to. I have to make it harder for them. I have to make them prove their ingenuity or heroism, you know? Yeah.
I love that. That
It's
is
a lot
so
of fun.
cool. So when you guys play D&D,
Right.
do you guys have certain types of characters that you like to play? Do you have one that you've been with for a very long time? Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I actually only started playing D&D about 2 years ago, so I'm still on my first character. He's managed to survive a few tough scrapes, but yeah, he's a wizard. He sort of throws caution to the wind in pursuit of new spells or studying a magical creature. He's just a disgusting little dwarf character, and he's super fun to play.
No, you're supposed to play something different.
I know, I play with what I know. Which is, yeah.
Since I used to be a player when I was younger, and I started playing D&D when I was 8 years old with my older brother. But once he went off to university, I was almost exclusively a dungeon master. And that, again, was one of those things that really spurred on my creativity, where I had to come up with stories, I had to come up with NPCs and settings, and follow along with, you know, get a feel for what the players were doing and guide that insane momentum into each story. And like you said, sometimes people just want to talk to the tavern NPC, or they decide one ludicrous thing they've picked up randomly is going to be important. And so you have to be able to, it's a form of improv.
Yeah.
You know, how can we yes and this whole situation and make it fun?
100%.
It's a nice way to kind of test your creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Do you guys have a favorite dice that you use?
Ooh, well, I gotta say that when I went down to the Wizards of the Coast offices, they were kind enough to give me a dice set. So it's like the official D&D dice set. So
Cool.
I treasure that one for sure. But then I also splashed out on some pretty nice metal dice. So I use those quite often.
Yeah, I've got this really nice set of gold metal dice.
Yeah.
They're really heavy.
Yeah. Cool.
So when I'm rolling it behind the screen, my players know I'm messing with them.
Ooh, yeah.
They can hear this satisfying clunk.
Yeah.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
It's so much more dramatic.
Oh, it's great. There's something to be said for that visceral, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I want to switch gears and talk about this
Bizarre
insanity.
thing.
Tell me all about how this came about.
So it's really special actually being here at Emerald City Comicon because 2 years ago at this show, Sarah Gatos from, at the time she was at IDW, the IDW crew had gone out for dinner with the Oni Press people. I mean, almost all these companies, they know each other, they hang out. Conventions are more than just what happens during the day, but in the evening we're socializing and spending time. And so they're out for dinner and someone's like, hey, we should do kooky crossovers between our comics. And so as they're brainstorming stuff, someone at the dinner said, Rick and Morty meets Dungeons and Dragons. And everyone went, oh, that would be weird. And then it kind of stuck in their head. So the next morning, Sarah comes to me and says, well, you're doing the D&D comics. Is this even vaguely of interest to you? I said, sure, but it'll never happen. She goes, what do you mean? Well, you know, Wizards of the Coast and Adult Swim are never going to let us run rampant all over these two properties. And it took a while for them to negotiate it all out. And in the midst of that, they reached out to Patrick Rothfuss, who's this award-winning, best-selling author, and asked him about his interest in it. And so Pat and I got brought together with artist Troy Little. And Troy is honestly one of the most skilled and phenomenal cartoonists in the business. He is so good at what he does, and the three of us just started working together on this insane project. And Pat had this kind of high-end mission statement. He said, look, everyone thinks that D&D is just killing monsters and getting treasure, but it's so much more than that. It's the way we spend time together, and it's how we see ourselves and empower ourselves to be more than what we are.
Gosh.
And people think that Rick and Morty is just like edgelord humor and violence and nihilism, and it is those things, but it's also about a broken family trying
So
to
much
find
heart.
each other and learn to love, you know?
Yeah.
And he says, we can tell both of those kinds of stories. We can tell the low-end, violent, stupid Rick and Morty story that has aspirations of something more, and we can tell the stupid, let's get XP and you know, murder hobo D&D, but we can also tell something about why D&D is the greatest game, a love letter to the hobby. And as soon as I read that, I was like, we're gonna get along great. Because that's exactly how I see Dungeons and Dragons. And that was sort of our you know, the burst of momentum that we needed to get going.
Man, that is so tender. I love
thanks.
that. And is this out yet?
Yeah, this just came out this week, so that's why it's extra special.
Go
So,
check it
so
out.
2 years ago, Sarah says, do you want to do this book? A year ago at this convention, Pat and I met in person for the first time, went for dinner, and started talking about working together. And this year, at the exact same show, Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons is in stores now. And so Emerald City has always been a special convention, but now it's like, it's all come full circle for me. And the book has been received so incredibly well, and people are really enjoying it. And people who come to me and they say, I didn't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm a huge Rick and Morty fan, and now I really want to play. Or D&D people were like, I haven't watched Rick and Morty, but now I'm going to watch the show. And I'm just like, first of all, how could you not have seen it? But second of all, like, wow, that we, you know, that we've kind of got the momentum of both behind it, and the support that we got from Adult Swim and Wizards of the Coast. Everyone just, everyone pushing in the same direction. It's been wonderful.
Well, I hope that you are celebrating tonight. That is awesome.
We had an amazing time putting it together. So.
Max, I just saw that you recently dropped some very, very cool Crit Roll fan art. I don't know if we got any
Yes.
Crit Roll fans in the audience, but
some
I
people here.
actually, Not to brag or anything, but I'm gonna brag. Those are my buddies, and I am interviewing them today, and I'm so excited.
That'll be amazing.
Is there anything that you would like me to pass on to them?
Just apologize that I'm drawing them so much. I hope it doesn't like creep them out or anything, but I just keep doing it. I love the characters so much, and they're so fun to draw. So yeah, I'm just shelling out drawings at a disturbing pace at this point.
I will give them your love.
Thank you.
You also recently, for Inktober, dropped a series of evil D&D characters. What made you want to make a campaign of characters who were just baddies?
Yeah, I love sort of the fact that you can go anywhere with evil characters. There's really no restrictions on, you know, what type of characters or how they look. And Inktober, which was started by Jake Parker, is something that I've always wanted to complete. I've tried it a few times. It's basically drawing an inked drawing every day of October. So it's 31 drawings on top of, you know, your day-to-day workload is really challenging. But the support I was getting from just, you know, Twitter and Instagram as I was doing it was really motivating, and adding a character every day to this, what eventually turned out to be a pretty giant piece, you know, everyone wanted to see how it would end, and I really wanted to see how it would end, so I kept saying, well, we'll see if I can actually finish this thing, and it was the first time that I ever managed to go all 31 days, so it was really fun.
And these 31 characters are so creative and awesome looking and badass. I'm like, every day you were posting a new one.
Yeah.
And I was just like refreshing Twitter, like I gotta see the next one.
Yeah, it was
the best.
It's really fun to involve everyone in sort of the process of it too. And I was asking, like Jim, I asked him to come up with like a, you know, what would be a cool race class combo. So he came up with a, I think like an elf bard, an evil elf bard. So, you know, then you think about how you would design that. And a bunch of other people came up with great characters too. So it was, yeah, really fun to involve other people in it as well.
Cool, so you took input from people who were watching you. That is so cool.
Absolutely.
I thought initially that you that you just kind of took the idea and ran with it, like I'm gonna make evil D&D characters, but I love that that was a decision that you made at every step of the process.
Yeah, it was like a bit of a mix, because I started off just doing ones like, oh, today would be really fun to draw like a turtle, and so I did like a barbarian turtle, but then after a while I was just like, hey, if anyone else has any ideas, I'd love to draw, you know, fresh it up and try some other ideas as well, so yeah.
I'm gonna have to ask you to draw my D&D character, whose name I can't say on stream.
I've heard it.
Vulgar.
It's amazing.
I think this is one of the most amazing things. Like D&D is having this moment, and so many people I talk to are either getting into the game, getting back into the game, starting games, wanting to learn more about the hobby. It's an amazing time. You know, so much of the entertainment that we get is just kind of getting inundated at us one way, and to have interactivity, to be able to say, I'm going to create stories, I'm going to do something with my friends, and we're all going to get together, and we don't know what it's going to become when we get to the end of it, but it's going to be something fun and cool, and we all get to be involved. I think that's really special.
Yeah.
You know?
It's also such an exercise in not trying to control things.
Right.
And I love that as a player and as a DM, you have to really practice not trying to control every facet, because everybody wants to have a good time.
Absolutely.
Everybody wants the story to go well, but you take the game out of it if you're like, no, we got to move on from talking to this goat salesman, and everybody just wants to romance them. So
how many times, you know, in your day-to-day life do you get to be kind of spontaneous and heroic? Like, it's just a cool thing that people get to do and get together and build memories together, you know? It's awesome.
D&D is cool, you guys. You should play it. It's very metal. Jim, you also have a Patreon, and I'm really interested because I think there are a lot of comic book creators out here and artists as well, who are considering dipping their toes in this. It's, you know, it's never been easier to support the artists that we love. So can you speak to your experience with Patreon?
It's really, like so many other things, the internet has allowed for amazing opportunities. So when I first started making my own comics, my kind of breakout was in 2010 with a fantasy comedy comic called Skullkickers that I did at Image.
I love Skullkickers.
So much fun.
Awesome.
People responding to it and then asking me, well, how did you get into this? And I having to sort of describe, well, I don't know. Like, I started making these comics. It was a lot of fun. And so people go, well, how do you write a comic? Well, this is how I write a comic. So I would write these blog posts that were sort of me figuring out how I got where I got and sort of saying, I wish I had known this, you know, as I was doing it. Because these were just little things that once you're on the other side and you've been published, some of this advice seems really obvious, but as someone who's getting started, you may not know about what a book proposal looks like, or how you communicate with your editor, or you know what the schedule and timeline is for building a comic. And I know that doesn't sound very sexy or exciting, but it's part of that bigger publishing process. And so I put these articles together, and then editors were sharing them with people and saying, this is how, Jim's right, this is how you do a pitch. This is how you do, you know, the process. This is how a script works. This is what proofing is. And all of a sudden editors were calling me up and they go, I've been sending your blog to everyone and I've never hired you. I feel like I probably should by this point because I've sent so many people your way. And then I would get people would come to me a year or so later and they say, I got my first book project because I followed your pitch, not template, but advice.
Yeah.
I owe you. And I was like, you don't owe me anything. And so finally, I got enough of these people messaging me saying, I want to give you money. And I said, well, buy my books. I bought your books. I want to give you money. And I'm like, I mean, I can't, sure, I guess. So I made a Patreon, and I started putting up an archive of my scripts and my outlines, notes from editors, all the stuff, so you get a real in-depth look at how this stuff works. And then I put it into 3 ridiculous tiers from all the things I heard from people. So someone said, oh man, I'd love to take you for a coffee and pick your brain. So the first tier of my Patreon is $3, and it's called, can I get you a coffee? And then the second one is called, hey, I'd love to buy you a beer, because you really helped me learn how this business works. So the second tier is called, can I get you a pint? And the third one's called, I need to take you for dinner. And it's basically like, you get to see different, you know, projects I've worked on and get a feel for kind of what's happening under the hood of the publishing industry.
I love that, and I think it so speaks to the collaborative nature of the comics industry and how there's so little gatekeeping. And truly, if you are an artist or a writer who wants to get into comics, there are so many resources of people who want to help, because it sucks to have to figure it out yourself.
And the internet's leveled everything. Like, you know, I did a book at Image called Wayward, and my co-creator on it, Stephen Cummings, he lives in Japan. He lives in Yokohama. We can get on Skype. You know, Max and I talk over Skype all the time, or Google Hangout or whatever.
Yep.
You don't have to be in the same place anymore. You don't have to be in the same time zone. You can be anywhere and be creative and collaborate with people. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, and just posting your work online, fan art, like fantasy drawings is essentially what got me the job on the D&D comic book in the first place, just from the stuff I was posting online.
I saw your tweet. You were talking about how art majors and teachers kind of say, like, don't do fan art, but that's...
No, it's not true. Yeah.
You gotta see how, you know, an IP looks with your styles.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
100%.
And it's to say, like, you still need to, the work has to be professional quality, and if you want to be a comic artist, you have to post storytelling sequentials, not just pin-ups and sketches. But all of that artwork is still part of your portfolio. It's still part of the depth and breadth of what you can do.
Yeah. I hope you guys are paying attention, because this is incredible advice if you are trying to get into the comic book industry. Absolutely check out Jim's Patreon. And we have just a couple minutes left, and because we are talking about D&D, we gotta play the roll the dice
roll
game.
the D20.
I was
Wait,
busting
I'm so
through. I have so many
All right,
questions for
give
you
it a
guys
roll.
that I was just busting through.
You do
Me
it.
first?
Yeah.
Oh,
All right, so I have some questions.
That way, if you
that are
roll low, I can
associated
mock
with a
you.
number.
You'll mock me
Oh,
anyways.
yeah, I know. Oh, he got a natural
Natural
20.
20.
Can you believe it? Oh my.
Jeez.
Can't write this.
Oh, jeez.
Okay,
You're
let's
such
say
a cliche.
I know.
let's say it's Final Jeopardy and the scores are all tied. What are you hoping the category is?
Okay. Marvel superheroes would be great. DC superheroes, also good. Third one, Canadian superheroes. I'll take that.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're
Great.
hoping the
Obscure.
category's Canadian
Yeah.
superheroes?
Yeah, it seems obscure.
pretty good.
Yeah, it's a small list. but
Yeah,
I'll
it's
take
all
it.
right.
How about you, Jim?
It would, nowadays, I feel like it would be name this first edition Dungeons and Dragons module.
Yeah.
I've been trying to fill in my collection. So I always wanted the complete set when I was a kid, and now I'm a big kid. So I go on eBay and I hunt auctions for all the stuff I always wanted when I was 9 years old.
That is so gratifying
Yeah.
to know that that's what you spend your money on as a D&D comics
It's,
writer.
it's a pretty classy life I've got here.
Okay, you roll now.
Okay,
Let's keep going.
I'm gonna, oh geez. 12. 12.
That's
12. Okay.
not great.
It's not great.
This is sweet. What do you guys remember about the first con you ever attended?
Oh.
That's funny because the first con I ever attended, even though I'm answering your
Do it.
role,
It's
but
good.
whatever, was actually Emerald City Comicon.
Oh.
Yeah.
Aw.
And I met Jim at that con
That's true.
for the first time. And I got my first work ever professionally at that convention. So Emerald City is very special to me for all of those reasons. Mainly because that's where I met Jim.
Aw,
It's the life.
gosh.
That is very sweet.
He's not this nice when he's not on
No,
camera.
no, this is all a lie and fake.
My first convention was 2002. Scott McCloud, I was doing a webcomic online, and Scott McCloud reached out to me and said he liked it, which is mind-blowing to me. And this was a different era. You could get a badge for San Diego Comic-Con because Scott McCloud said you were a professional. So he got me a badge, and he put me in touch with people who offered me crash space on the floor of a hotel room. And all I needed was a plane ticket. It was going to be my first professional kind of comic experience. But I at the time, my finances weren't in good shape. And so I wasn't going to go. And I told my brother, and he called my dad. Oh, I'm going to get all verklempt here. And my dad bought me a plane ticket because he knew this was important to me. And he doesn't know comics. He doesn't even care about any of this pop culture stuff, but he knew that I wanted to do it. So that was my first convention experience, and it kind of started everything.
That's real sweet.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, jeez.
Gosh.
Oh, jeez, Rick.
Oh, jeez. Oh no, my ear. I love what you guys said about this comic book experience, this convention experience, because we're here for the fans, but there's this entire other aspect where it's like
Yeah.
this is where people get jobs.
Totally.
This is how we fund this industry, and this is how we're allowing it to keep going.
You get a convention family, the friends that you see here year after year.
Oh, yeah.
It's really special.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna cry. Let's do a couple more rolls. Oh, we got 30 seconds left. Real quick, lightning
Go for it.
round.
Go. On me.
What?
All right.
Lightning round, okay. Dun, dun, dun.
4.
4. If you could somehow talk to your younger self, what would you tell them to totally blow their mind?
That I would be working in comics. It's all I've ever wanted to do, and that would just blow my tiny little mind for sure.
Oh, yes.
That after my name, it will say The Avengers, because I'm writing that for Marvel, so.
Great
yeah.
answer.
Thanks.
You guys are such a delight. You're both geniuses. Thank you for sitting down with me. Guys, keep your eyes peeled. We have so much cool stuff happening. And if you are watching from home, keep your eyes straight on Sci-Fi at Emerald City. It is your place for all things fandom. We love you. We appreciate you. And we will see you soon. Up next, Minecraft Creative Team Top Graphic Novel. What the heck? Awesome. We'll see you later.